John Atkinson. I was born April 21st, 1926, as was Queen Elizabeth II. Now, I don't get a card from her, nor does she get one from me, but I can remember VE Day, VJ Day. I know where I was, what I was doing. But December 7th, my mind's a blank. And I don't know why. I really don't have any memory of it, Fred. Mine's a blank. I think maybe I was like 16 at the time. 15, 16. And when you're 15, 16, there's a whole world going on out there that you're trying to get used to with girls and, baseball games. And so, you probably aren't as intensely interested in world affairs as you should be. Anyway, I don't remember it. Everybody that was physically able, in my neighborhood was joining up one way or the other. And I went into the Navy about 3 days after I graduated from high school. I hardly remember graduation. I really don't. I was so, waiting for the service and what it was going to hold for me. And I think I went in about 3 days after graduation, which was about June, very, very close to D-Day, amazingly enough. D-Day was, June 6th, 44. And I either went in on the 6th or the 7th. So you see, there are a lot of guys already getting killed all over the field of battle, and I'm just now getting involved. I went into the Navy. Most of my friends either went to the Marines or the Army. I don't know why, but...
Why'd you pick the Navy?
Well, I grew up in the ocean, and it just seemed like a natural thing to do. That's the only excuse I have. Went to boot camp in Bainbridge, Maryland, which, as I recall, was maybe 40 miles from Washington, D.C. Went through boot camp there and had an opportunity to go to training in the medical corps. I had kind of thoughts in those days of maybe being a doctor. I didn't work out, but anyway, so I went to the medical corps in the Navy right after boot camp. When we were advised, guys, you're done, everybody's jumping around, right, swinging their arms. A buddy of mine accidentally elbowed me right here and knocked out my 2 front teeth. Okay, right? Now, I haven't had a date for 4 months, and I'm kind of looking forward to, going home and maybe going to a movie with a cute little girl or something. Well, I'm going home without 2 front teeth. Very, very upsetting, very distressing. So what can you do?
Sure.
From boot camp, we were sent out to San Diego, and we boarded the USS Kitty Hawk, which was a Liberty ship, one of these great big fat-bellied Liberty ships for troop carrying. And we rolled across the ocean over to Hawaii. And if I can digress, we got into a terrible storm. Now, you couldn't make me seasick because I'd spent my life growing up on the ocean. But I'm going to tell you, if there were 5,000 people on that ship, there were probably 2 people that didn't get sick, myself and the captain. I mean, it was terrible. We had Marines, mostly Marines and some Army. And they were all, off to the islands for the invasions. But that was a terrible, terrible mess getting, oh, Jesus. All those guys getting sick all over the place. And anyway, we got over to Hawaii, and I was assigned to a LSM 393. And I was put in charge of the sick bay. I don't know if you're acquainted with an LSM, but it's a landing craft designed to carry troops, equipment, tanks, tractors, whatever. It's not an invasion craft as such, but it's designed to facilitate the supplies to the island after it's reasonably secure. So anyway, it's a ship of maybe it's about 100 feet long. But the interesting thing about it is flat bottom. There's no keel. No keel. And we got into it. So I boarded in Hawaii. We went off to the Pacific, through the Solomon Islands and on up, and we got into another terrible storm. I mean, a storm you wouldn't believe. And an LSM, instead of, if you've got a keel, you're going to do this, right? Well, this darn thing would do that, boom. And first time in my life I ever got seasick, and I was so sick. I thought I wish somebody would have just shot me. But, you get over it. Anyway, we wound up carrying supplies into, I can't remember all. I remember Okinawa, Iwo Jima, but it was at a time after those islands had been secured. And we would unload all kinds of cargo, and having done that, we would meet a big cargo ship. We'd load up again and then take it wherever we were assigned to take it. And I was on that ship for, I don't know, about a year, I guess. I'd have to... You realize how long ago that is now? Do you? All right. So anyway, they were anticipating the invasion of the mainland of Japan. After we secured Okinawa, that was the spot from which, a lot of the troops are going to be taking off. And I got transferred over to a deserted, abandoned Japanese hospital on the China mainland. And my memory is that it was about 40 miles north of a town called Tientsin. Tientsin, it was probably a town of maybe 10,000, 15,000, and it was the dreariest, most desolate looking place. Everything was kind of gray. There was no color, no trees. I mean, it was a desperate looking little town. Anyway, we were stationed maybe 30 miles away from that towards the coast. And the hospital we were in was a one-story kind of a horseshoe-shaped arrangement that had been a Japanese hospital for their activities over there. And we were told that the Chinese had eventually gotten hold of it and liberated it. I mean, we weren't directly involved in, in any of that activity or action. As near as I can remember, we were there somewhere around February of '45, and it was a miserably cold winter. Nothing to do, no place to go. Tientsin had nothing to offer. We were short on supplies. Everybody was cold. Now, this is going to sound probably a little bit fictitious, but it actually happened. We were waiting for our parkas. We were waiting for our boots. We were waiting for all kind of winter clothing. Finally, supplies showed up. You're going to guess what they were? Mostly not tropical, but tents and tenting equipment, camping equipment, Bunsen burners. Nothing. Nothing that you could put on and stay warm with. Obviously, our purpose there, or at least we were told, was to accommodate the casualties that they were expecting from the land invasion in Japan, which were going to be damn significant. I mean, they were projecting as much as $300,000 American casualties, all of which is, I suppose, anybody's guess, but you know how tenacious the Japanese were. You almost had to go in and drag them out of a hole and then probably kill them, because they just weren't the surrendering type of mentality. And so they were projecting some horrendous losses and actually invading the mainland of Japan. And obviously at that point, we're not serving any purpose being where we are. So I don't know. To this day, I would never know how this happened, but my LSM 393 was in a harbor about 30 miles away, and I got reassigned to my LSM 393. Yeah, weird. But we wound up in Shanghai Harbor, and the ship was decommissioned, I assume, along with many others, and it was turned over to the Chinese. It was just, I handed them the key. I was told to strip my sick bay and it took three mattress covers, full of medicines and syringes and scalpels and anything, textbooks, anything that, that I had in that. And we just simply dumped it over the fantail and let it sink to the bottom of the bay. Anyway, I'm back on my LSM, and it's probably around August, well, maybe September of 45. Both wars are now over, and we're really, serving no purpose. But our crew didn't get discharged until, I got out of the service in July of 46. So you see, there's a period of 10 months there where we're really serving no purpose. Now, why they didn't bring us home a little sooner, I have no idea. But we're sitting, I spent most of that time, we were island hopping. Each one of these islands has got troops on it, and they need supplies and so on and so forth. Almost every one of them has a hospital, even though temporary, rather like, MASH, except they weren't mobile. They were just sort of temporary. So we had something to do. The other thing that happened to me, when we're sitting in Shanghai Harbor waiting, just to get out of here and go home, the only thing I'm doing is running back and forth into town or to other dock ships and exchanging movies and that kind of nonsense. Well, we had a boxing in an intership, what we'd now call maybe an intramural boxing. And in those days, I did a little boxing. Okay. So I'm into this boxing with this guy, and he nails me just in a perfect position, and he breaks my eardrum, right? I get sent over to the USS Mercy, I think, a hospital ship that was in the harbor. I sit there for 10 days in that damn hospital getting penicillin shots, and all my buddies are going home, right? Very sad. And that pretty much covers my military history. When I was in my teens, I had a relative that had an interest in a dude ranch at the base of Mount Princeton in Colorado, the Collegiate Peaks area. And I'd come out in the summertime and work. And I just fell in love with this country out here. So when I got out of the service, I came to college and went to the University of Denver, where I got my degree. And I squeezed 5 years of college out of the GI Bill. And fortunately, I belonged to a fraternity, so I worked for room and board. I think we got $90 a month. I think that was and so, in those days, if you had room and board, $90 a month, you're doing pretty good. So anyway, so then I got my first year of law school out of it, and then I had to finish at night school, law school. 1958. Yeah. All these streets out here were dirt. Wadsworth was dirt. When we came out here, we're all pretty much of the same age. And almost everybody served in the military in some fashion or other. First 5 or 6 years I was out here, I was the law. I was the JP. We started with one policeman, Ed McCarthy, super nice guy. From there we went to Len Bishop and Bill Brophy. We had 2 cops, almost all the time that I was the JP. And then we incorporated, and things got enlarged. We had our own municipal court, and the whole thing changed. But yeah, for a long while, if you misbehaved yourself, you had to come over here and sit up there in one of my conference rooms and get penaltied. Actually, when I first moved here, the organization that really was most popular was the Junior Chamber of Commerce. And a lot of us belonged to that for years and years. And it was a very, very active group, and did a lot of neat things. I was on the water board in the early days. I've been past president of my Rotary Club, still belong. Got a really neat group of guys that belong to that. And now I'm involved in the Broomfield Community Foundation. It's really a worthwhile foundation designed to, assist in so many areas of giving. And that's taking up some time. And it's disturbing a little bit. I understand about, natural growth. But, for a long while, this was still a fairly small town. 10, 15,000 people. You didn't have the traffic problems we have today. The thing that depresses me the most, depressing is too dramatic a word, but when I used to come back from downtown on 36, from about Sheridan on into town, it was all country. It was all farmland. You could roll the windows down and you could smell the manure if you want, or the fresh mown hay, I'm being kind of dramatic, but I really enjoyed that. Well, that's virtually gone now. If not entirely, it's pretty quick. Actually, most of us my age were a little bit lucky in the respect that had we been a year older, maybe a year and a half older, we'd have been a lot more exposed to combat. As I told you early on, when I joined the service, D-Day was just happening. So none of my age group certainly was in on D-Day. Now I did lose a couple of my friends were killed in the Pacific. But the age right in front of me, a year or two older, that my sister ran around with, now a number of those guys were killed. The mortality rate of the guys just a little bit older than me was far greater than, my age. I'll say this, the best thing that ever happened to me was serving in the service. I mean, I got 5 years of college out of it. I got a lot of maturity out of it. I got a law degree out of it. And I wouldn't have given that experience up for anything in the world. In fact, had I had some kind of a disability and been denied that privilege, I would really resent that today. It's hard for me to answer that question, but I really don't think so. And I'm not sure it's their fault. I'm glad to see you doing this, because 100 years from now, there's going to be a lot of people that aren't going to believe what the Nazis did to Europe. They're not going to believe it, are they? If not 100 years from now, maybe 500 years from now, that man could be so inhuman to, other people. And so I don't know how to answer your question, but I don't think probably they're very tuned into it.